what an ending. I cannot wait to see what happens next week. Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like to consume, including things like Doctor Who, Star Trek, and the MCU. We are here for our weekly reviews of WandaVision. We're up to episode 5. I had to think there for a second. Episode 5, which is called, consult my notes, On a Very Special Episode. And it is a very special episode with a very special guest star at the end. We'll come to that later. Warning, just to give you my quick thoughts on the episode before we get into spoilers, I really loved this episode. This was possibly my favourite episode yet. It gave us a nice blend of the sitcom with the real world stuff, and I think it's a good balance they've struck here in this episode. I'm glad they didn't do it like this from the start. I know some people wanted that. I didn't. I like what we've gotten so far for the most part. And I kind of think they've done stuff at exactly the right place. And this, moving to this kind of shared sort of equal screen time between what's happening in the outside of the bubble world and inside of the bubble world, fits at this point in the show. And I think it's probably what we're going to get going forward for the next couple of episodes as well, as we go into the 90s and the 2000s sitcom eras. So I really liked that. There was a lot of stuff which the world of the sitcom, while we're in it, is also starting to break down a little bit more, and I kind of like that. It gives it even more so. And I mentioned this at the start, that it had the show itself has a kind of very Twin Peaks feel, you know, strange suburban town, weird things going on that don't quite make sense. This was ramped up in the sitcom elements of this episode, and it felt even more bizarre and weird and trippy, and I love it. We also seeming to get more answers, but I do think that those answers are maybe leading us down a path deliberately that is not quite the truth, that is only partially the truth. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes to. And we get some lovely interactions between the people outside, the agents of S.W.O.R.D. the agents of S.W.O.R.D. who you get more of Darcy, more of Jimmy Woo. It's a good dynamic they've got going there. So overall, very good episode. From this point on, I am going to be no holds barred. I'm going to be talking spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, I particularly think you should go and watch this one before watching any spoiler-like reviews. There is some stuff in this that you will want to experience. This morning, when I checked my Twitter feed, I saw somebody had said, if you haven't watched it yet, get off Twitter because there's a lot of spoilers going around. So I immediately didn't go on Twitter again for the morning because I knew I wouldn't be able to watch this till about midday. So I did that. I suggest you do too. So we're in 80s sitcom era now, a kind of era that I'm vaguely familiar with via repeats of things like Cheers and Roseanne that kind of originated in that era that were on when I was a kid. I remember lots of repeats of those type of shows. So I'm very familiar with that. And this has a feeling of those kind of family shows, not less so Cheers. Although the opening credits I thought were very Cheers, like, kind of slow, emotive music, emotive song with kind of flashes of characters and things. It was nice. It was the cheesiest opening yet, I think, but it does fit the era. And we get the usual tropes of that era of, stressed parents, particularly. That's, from Roseanne and that line. I believe from Family Ties and those type of things as well, which of course, I'm surprised they didn't do more of a reference to Family Ties. I never watched not Family Ties. Full House. That's the one that her sisters were in, wasn't it? I forgot getting them mixed up now. But the one her sisters were in, I may have missed references to it because I never watched it, but I thought they would have some more overt references to it. I suppose there were twins, so that in itself is kind of a reference. But we got some nice little again hijinks of sitcoms from the era and a few tropes from those eras, and that was all very nice and enjoyable. But there was a lot more breaking down of that fourth wall in this episode. But not the fourth wall, breaking down of the breaking down of the vision that, no pun intended, that Wanda has put up around herself. Or at least we presume it's Wanda, and this episode heavily leads us to believe it's Wanda. So there's one moment where Agnes comes in, and she actually, like, turns to Wanda. Something Vision, sort of says, oh no, I really don't want you to touch the babies and stuff like that. Have you washed your hands and all that sort of stuff? And it seems to throw Agnes for a second, and she turns to Wanda and asks her if she'd like to do those lines again. And Wanda seems genuinely confused about what's going on here. Like, she doesn't know entirely what's going on. Which is interesting because her actions later on in the episode would lead you to believe she knows exactly what's going on. Or at least in some parts. So, this episode, I don't know, with the way Wanda's acting, she kind of contradicts herself a little bit. And I wonder if that will play into some more revelations a bit later on. But Agnes, seems to completely break character. And Vision, throughout this whole episode, is getting more and more suspicious, which leads up to a big confrontation at the end of the episode, which I absolutely loved. There was that, which froze him a little bit. And then later on, he's at work, and the new computers that they're installing at his work in the 80s have the internet, and they get an email. Throwback to the old dial-up modem noise. A sound of my teenage years. And and the email is a report from S.W.O.R.D about Wanda. And that's when he really sort of clicks that something is going on here, and he touches the head of his colleague and sort of breaks the spell on his colleague for a moment, and his colleague reverts to what we presume is his real personality, and is like, oh my god, I've got to contact my family, where's my phone, and all this sort of stuff. It was that was one of those moments that went quite surreal, and I thought it had a very strong Twin Peaks vibe. And then he also tells Vision that he's in pain, and that Vision needs to save them from her. Now, Vision assumes it's Wanda. We assume it's Wanda. Everything is leading us to believe it's Wanda. But I think there's more to this. I think there's another party at play that is maybe manipulating Wanda as well as everyone else. Not that Wanda is completely free from blame, or that she isn't a part of it, but I think she's wrapped up in it as well, and that plays into how she reacts to some of the things going slightly wrong. She genuinely seems confused in some moments. So I think either she's cast a spell on herself so that she acts the way she should act as well, and therefore it takes something really jarring to break her out of it. But while she's in it, she genuinely is confused and is sort of has the same sort of spell on her, or similar to how the rest of the world is. So that's interesting. So I think the theory about Mephisto is probably right. I still think Agnes has something to do with it. And maybe she made a deal. Maybe once she'd gotten Vision's, or maybe before she'd stolen Vision's body, as we saw in some CCTV footage that the S.W.O.R.D agents show us. She stole Vision's body. Maybe before that she made a deal with Mephisto that she could create this world, or he would give her a means to create this world. She just needed to go get his body. But the what this does affects her as well. So we get all that stuff going on, and Vision starting to question a lot more about what's happening inside the world. Then we get the stuff with S.W.O.R.D outside, and it's nice to see more of Jimmy Woo and Darcy again. I love their chemistry. They got a nice little sort of buddy cop type thing going. I love it. And Monica has obviously woken up as well, and she's inputting her views into it as well. There's a sort of debrief scene where they go over the history of Wanda and the fact that she is now been identified as the sort of hostile element in here. Up until now, they were assuming she was a victim. Now they are assuming that she is the aggressor in this situation, that she has kidnapped these people. And the head of S.W.O.R.D, can't remember his name, sorry, really does not like her. He clearly does not like her one little bit and has no good things to say about her. But Jimmy and to a limited degree Darcy and even Monica, who was, don't forget, spent time with her within that world that Wanda's created, defend her slightly. You know, talking about how she was manipulated, whereas the S.W.O.R.D guy talks about her being a terrorist. Monica's defending her, going, well, no, she doesn't have any political aims here. She's not a terrorist. You know, she's a distraught human being that has taken some rash actions. I think by the end of this show, she's going to end up with the name Scarlet Witch, because at the moment she hasn't got that name, which is emphasized by the head of S.W.O.R.D, who asks, you know, does she have an alias? Does she have one of those silly code names? And no, she doesn't at this point. But I suspect by the end of it, she'll be giving them. Darcy has already named something the Hex, which is something from the comics to do with her powers as well. So, you know, we're going to get to those silly code names at some point. She's going to be called the Scarlet Witch inevitably at some point by the end of the show, I think. Another little thing I picked up on, I don't know if you caught it, but when Monica is talking about going back inside and what she would need to go back inside, she lists a load of effectively scientific gobbledygook jargon. But one of those words struck out to me because one of the words within loads of other scientific words she uses about what she would need to go back in was photons. Now, photon, I believe, is Monica Rambeau's alias, superhero alias in the comics, because she at one point becomes a Captain Marvel, I believe. And then another point, after that, once Carol Danvers has become Captain Marvel, she takes on the moniker of Photon, which seems to also in this be her mother's nickname. Because in a shot of her mother, picture of her mother up on the headquarters of S.W.O.R.D last week, we saw Maria Photon Rambeau. So that was a nickname of her mother. So she's inevitably probably going to take it on, but maybe going in with these photons and whatever else she's going to use to go back inside at some point, that will give her her powers, maybe. But talking of Captain Marvel, there was a distinct look on her face when Jimmy Woo mentions Captain Marvel and the battle against Thanos and the fact that Captain Marvel could have won that potentially by herself. You know, her and Scarlet Witch were potentially the only ones that could have ended it by themselves. And there's just this look on her face as like, oh, don't mention that name to me. Now, we know they have a history from the Captain Marvel movie. You know, she was Auntie Carol growing up. But there's clearly some, I don't know, some bad blood maybe between them. She maybe feels that Carol abandoned them, didn't check in when she came back to Earth. I don't know. Let her mother die. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of something going on there with her feelings towards Captain Marvel. And I think she's due to be in the next Captain Marvel film, so I'm guessing we're going to see these played out in that film. But the action that S.W.O.R.D decided to take is to send a drone with 1980s technology, so it doesn't need to be changed when it goes through the barrier, or Wanda won't change it because it's already in the era that it should be. They send that in and launch a missile at her, which Monica didn't know about. Darcy didn't know about. Jimmy, you know, the characters we root for didn't know about. It was the head of S.W.O.R.D who had decided to try and wipe her out as a potential threat. Of course, it doesn't work, and Wanda emerges from the town bubble with the shattered drone in hand and sort of throws it back at them. This is the biggest indication we've had yet that Wanda knows absolutely everything that's going on, because she leaves it back in her Sokovian accent. She addresses them and sort of warns them, this is the only warning I'm giving you. Don't, you know, leave me in my home alone. And then walks back into the bubble. So that's the biggest indicator we've got that she knows what's going on. But I still think there's a twist coming with that. Then we get an absolutely fantastic confrontation between Wanda and Vision. He is clued up on what's going on now. He knows that she's manipulating things. He doesn't know exactly what's going on. He doesn't have any memories before their life there or anything like that. But he knows something is wrong. He knows, you know, he's noticed all these weird things. He knows that she is keeping people and changing their personalities to fit in with the world she has created. And they have a blazing row about it. At one point, they completely confront each other, and they're both hovering in the air like they're about to have a massive, big MCU style fight. You know, like I was, you know, on the verge of like Captain America versus Iron Man style fights, but didn't quite get to that. But there was a lot of shouting. It was a very highly charged emotional moment. And it was really well played, and I just thought it was gripping television. And then the doorbell goes. Oh, this was good. I kind of assumed that it would be, last chance for spoilers, I kind of assumed it would be her brother, because they'd made a point of mentioning him earlier on, and I had heard the rumours that the actor who played Quicksilver in the MCU was not returning, but the actor that played Quicksilver in the X-Men movies had been spotted on set. So I had heard those rumours. So when I kind of thought at that point it might be him. Open the door, you see the back of his head. Yes, it's the Fox X-Men Quicksilver. And he mentions something about, oh, hey, haven't you got a hug for your big bro or something like that? And cliffhanger. But what a cliffhanger. I mean, I kind of assumed there were rumors this was going to happen, but still it worked as a fantastic reveal. And I'm so glad even though I suspected, I didn't know that was coming for definite. I avoided the spoilers. I'd heard the rumors, but I avoided the people that had seen it and knew for certain. What this means going forward, I don't know, because I got theories. Sure, this is the first crossover between the Fox universe and the MCU universe that we've had. The Fox X-Men universe, the Marvel universe. We were wondering how they were going to introduce mutants. I think this gives us a hint towards that. I think somehow he's been drawn from his universe, and I don't think it's Wanda that did it. I think because they made a point of having that conversation about her having a brother with her kids earlier on in the episode. One of those kids is meant to go on to have, according to the comics anyway, have similar powers to Wanda, possibly stronger. So I think that kid did it. The kid that will grow up to be Wiccan. Oh, I think it's Wiccan is his superhero name. I think he did it. I think he saw his mother talking about how she missed her brother and he was very far away, and he reached out with his mind and pulled Pietro in. But because the Pietro from this universe is dead, he had to reach a little further, and he plucked him from another universe. That's what I think happened. And that is how I think we're going to get introduced to the concept of mutants. And from that, by the end of the show, maybe, or if not by the end of the show, by the end of Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, which Wanda is going to be in, she will use this knowledge of mutants from this other universe to create mutants in the MCU universe. But boy, what a fantastic ending. What a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed that. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Were you expecting that twist at the end? Did you enjoy it? What are your theories on the possibilities that presents to us? How do you think this is going to go next week with Pietro and into the future, and how it affects how the X-Men are going to be introduced into the MCU? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be back for another review next week. I will see you then.